Erin successfully grows her café reputation after impressing noble guests with her desserts. Despite this, Serena begins plotting again, first by sending an assassin after Erin, who is only saved thanks to Calix arriving in time. It becomes clear that someone is deliberately trying to eliminate her. At the same time, Erin accepts a dangerous challenge. She agrees to bake a cake for Serena's upcoming ball, fully aware it's a trap. Instead of backing down, she decides to confront things head-on and stop being an easy target. Meanwhile, tensions rise around her. Raymond grows increasingly conflicted about her. Calix becomes more openly supportive and protective, and Ames remains determined to clear her name once he recovers. The episode ends with Calix revealing that he intends to personally take Erin to the ball, and even surprises her by preparing luxurious dresses for her, hinting at his deeper feelings and setting the stage for a major confrontation at the event. The heroine asks in surprise why he wants to give her such a gift. In response, the young man asks how she interprets it herself. Erin thinks for a moment and recalls that at first it seemed like mere interest, and then like concern. She thought he was helping her out of old affection. Calix reminds her that she made him a promise, and that promise was that she would accept the dress from him as a gift. Erin de Brizia is known throughout the Empire as a divorced duchess with a bad reputation, and for many, their earliest memories of her are tied to the time when she was just 13 years old. Sitting on the summer terrace, the Emperor turns to Calix and orders him to behave properly when he meets Erin. He explains that she is his brother's future wife and reminds him of the importance of his reputation. He sternly warns him not to even think about running away, as he did last time. The Crown Prince recalls that at that time, Erin was already engaged to his brother, and back then, she held no interest for him. The young gentleman sat at the table, still thinking about slipping away unnoticed. The butler informs His Highness that the daughter of the Marquis of Brizia has arrived. Calix continued to think this way until the very moment she appeared before him. The lovely lady thanks him for the invitation and introduces herself as Erin de Brizia. His Highness immediately asks her to drop the formalities and invites her to join them at the table. The dark-haired boy cannot take his eyes off this girl. He realizes that standing before him is his brother's future wife. 6 months later, they became engaged, and a year after that, the wedding took place. Afterward, Erin moved into the palace. However, immediately after the wedding, her brother Raymond brought his mistress to the palace, and the lonely duchess continued to be mocked and condemned at every opportunity. Erin seemed oblivious to both the rumors and the mockery, calmly going about her duties in the palace and managing the household with her usual quiet efficiency. But that was only a superficial impression. Calix had no idea how much longer the girl his brother had brought would remain in the palace. His wife was constantly busy with her duties, while his mistress spent her days organizing balls and receptions. One day, walking down the hallway, the young gentleman noticed a light in the kitchen. This surprised him, for it was already late, and the servants usually retired to their rooms at that hour. When the Crown Prince opened the door slightly, he saw his brother's wife and decided it would be best to pretend he hadn't noticed anything. But suddenly, my lady sensed someone watching her and quietly asked who was there. Calix realized he'd been spotted, stepped into the room, and, looking a little embarrassed, asked if she was baking a lemon pie. Erin smiled slightly and admitted that she'd suddenly gotten a craving for lemon pie in the middle of the night. She added that her mother had given her the recipe and always said that sweets help when you're feeling down. Hearing this, the guy fell silent, so things really weren't easy for her here. After a pause, he said he hadn't even known she could cook. Marquise quietly explained that as a child, she had dreamed of opening her own little bakery somewhere in a quiet place and baking desserts every day. It had been her long-held dream. Erin offered His Highness a slice of pie and, in return, asked him to keep everything he had seen that night a secret. Calix asked with a slight smirk if she thought that would be enough to keep him quiet. The Marquise replied confidently that it would, adding that after the first bite, he himself would become her accomplice. At that moment, the young gentleman suddenly realized how her soft voice, gentle smile, and warm gaze were gradually filling him from within. These feelings slowly spread to his very heart, and for the first time he experienced such sweet sensations. Calix wanted Erin to always smile like that. Not long after that evening, when they had shared a pie in the kitchen, another event took place. The Crown Prince unexpectedly told the Marquise that he wanted to buy her a dress. She was surprised and asked why he had suddenly decided to bring it up. He recalled the ladies' conversations as they discussed the Duchess's outfit. They called it boring, lacking in adornments, and even decided that she looked as if she were in mourning. One of the ladies mentioned that Lady Serena had recently received a new dress from the Duke, adorned with precious stones, and looked much more like a real duchess. Upon hearing this, the Crown Prince realized he didn't want Erin to be hurt by such words. He said he simply wanted to give her a wedding gift. The Marquise reminded him that he had already sent a gift. Then Calix suggested considering this a birthday present. She replied that he didn't need to go to such lengths for her, but he still asked her to let him give her this gift because he really wanted to. Erin agreed and said she would be happy to accept his gift, but asked that it not be too expensive. Once back in his room, Calix realized he knew absolutely nothing about women's clothing. At first, he wanted to buy out an entire boutique, but then he realized she wouldn't like that, so he decided to limit himself to just one dress. He ordered the maid to summon the Imperial designer at once, and thought that if he gave her a dress brighter and more lavish than the other girls, no one would dare look down on Aaron anymore. Calix was certain that if she was suffering because of his brother, he could make her smile again. At the time, it seemed possible to him, though in reality it was a delusion. On Aaron's birthday, the couturier announced that the dress was ready. He emphasized that he had spared no expense in its creation and was certain that the lady would love such a gift. He explained that the fabric of the dress is incredibly light and delicate, of the highest quality and known as angelic. It has been treated using a special technique, and the neckline is adorned with precious stones. The designer added that the dress was designed in a new style that was ahead of the capital's fashion trends, and that any lady wearing it would become a true style icon. Calix enthusiastically praised it and ordered the dress to be packed immediately, as he wanted to present it personally. The couturier cried out, trying to explain that he hadn't finished speaking and wanted to add something important. The crown prince was certain she would love this gift. He simply wanted to see her smile again, just like that evening, and with that thought, he made his way to her. At that moment, Aaron was examining the dress and, noticing it, asked in surprise what had happened. Calix asked if she had received the gift. The Duchess replied that Prince Raymond had sent the dress via a maid because he was busy, and asked why he had come. At that moment, it felt as if cold water had been poured over him. He immediately realized that Raymond hadn't chosen the dress himself, but seeing the joy on Aaron's face, he realized that no other gift would bring such a smile to her. He said he'd wanted to give her a gift, but had come at the wrong time, since he'd wanted to be the first to congratulate her. Deep down, he knew that someone else had taken the place in her heart. The Duchess thanked him and said that a gift was by no means necessary, telling him not to worry. She added that he had already given her his time and invited him in for tea. The Crown Prince replied that he had come only to congratulate her and said it was time for him to leave. She gently suggested they meet another time. Calix realized that this was the end of his first love, which he hadn't even had a chance to tell her about. He knew he hadn't had time to confess his feelings anyway, and that he shouldn't have fallen in love with her in the first place. Over time, he realized that he wasn't the only one who had such thoughts. The Emperor once asked Calix what he thought of his brother's wife. He noted that he'd heard his brother often spent time with Aaron, and reminded him that she was busy with the household, so he shouldn't disturb her too much. Calix explained that he had simply noticed how difficult things were for her, which was why he had been visiting her. He said that she didn't show it, but it seemed to him that she was uncomfortable with Lady Serena's presence, and asked if it would be possible to send her away. The Emperor replied that if that would solve the problem, he would have done so long ago, but the reason lies with his brother. His Majesty explained that in the royal family, marriages are not based solely on love. Raymond is protesting now, but he will calm down in time, so there is no need to worry about Lady Cyrene. Then he said that one must not love someone who is already married, and that it is wrong. He added that Lady Cyrene herself understands this, so Calix needs to stop thinking about Aaron. Grandfather gently remarked that when he grows up, he'll definitely meet someone he truly loves, and then he'll be able to be with her. Calix had hoped more than once that his feelings would prove to be temporary. He decided that if he stopped seeing her, everything would gradually fade away, and with these thoughts, he left Royton. Later, a servant reported that his brother had divorced his wife. The Emperor was greatly angered by this, and so they all returned to the capital ahead of schedule. Upon hearing this, Calix immediately ordered the horses to be saddled, deciding to return at once. He thought he would see her just once, simply to make sure she was all right, and if she didn't need help, he would be there without interfering. When Aaron asked why he had given her this, he realized that no matter how much he talked about caring for her, in reality, he simply wanted to be by her side. But the Crown Prince realized that such feelings could become a heavy burden for her. He reminded her of the promise she had once made to accept a gift from him. Calix explained that he had wanted to give it to her on her birthday, but hadn't had time, and that had been weighing on his mind. He added that she happened to need a new dress for the ball, so now was the perfect time to present her with this gift. At that moment, the heroine suddenly remembers that something like this has happened before. She shakes her head slightly and says that this is too much, since one dress would have been enough. But the young gentleman disagrees, and insists that one dress is definitely not enough. There could be any number of occasions, and a new ball is just around the corner. He suggests she think of all this as a gift for the past 8 years. Aaron replies that she simply has nowhere to store all of it. Upon hearing this, Calix calmly offers to clear out a walk-in closet in his house for her. The girl is surprised, but quickly brushes it off and says it's no problem. The young gentleman gently remarks that she no longer needs to live modestly, as she did before. The heroine realizes he's right. Now nothing stands in her way of doing what she loves. She no longer needs to pretend to be the perfect duchess or conform to others' opinions. Aaron agrees that he's right. It's not a palace, and she can afford a little luxury. She admits that she's always wanted to attend a ball in an outfit like this and will wear these dresses with gratitude. Hearing this, Calix is genuinely delighted. He suggests choosing a dress for tomorrow and asks which one she likes best. Suddenly, he notices that Milady is quietly laughing and asks what's wrong. The girl replies that she simply recalled long-forgotten feelings and says that in the past, she could never refuse him. Aaron admits that she enjoyed seeing his happy face when she did what he wanted. That's exactly why she never refused him. The young gentleman is surprised and says he had no idea. The Marquise smiles and explains that there's nothing special about it. He was very sweet back then, and she often imagined that his younger brother might be just like him. She adds that it's a compliment. Calix replies that for a man, the word cute doesn't sound like a compliment at all. Aaron calmly says she'll keep that in mind. The Crown Prince returns to the topic of dresses and asks which one she will choose. He adds that the dress they were just looking at perfectly complements her hair color. The day of the ball at the Brennan estate arrives. A maid reports that she has brought the cake ordered by Miss Serena. Melly asks her to wait a moment and calls for the head maid. When she arrives, Melly asks her to make sure the cake isn't damaged during transport. She emphasizes that it's a very important cake. The head maid assures her that everything will be fine and there's no need to worry. After lunch, the main character closes her cafe. She then makes entries in her ledger, and once she's finished, she begins to get ready for the ball. Erin looks at the dress and catches herself thinking that she can't forget Calix's face. She remembers that even as a child, he loved to spend money and always bought whatever he liked. She tries to convince herself that all these gifted dresses and the fact that he will be her partner at the ball mean nothing special. Melly tells the Marquise that she has delivered the cake to the Brennan family. Then she asks if she can help with the preparations, if the lady doesn't mind. Erin replies that she can handle it on her own and that there's nothing complicated about it. She reminds her that Melly is no longer a maid, but an employee at her store. Melly objects and says that this dress isn't exactly easy to put on by herself. Then she asks what to do about her hair and makeup. The main character explains that she wants to look understated, not as flashy as she does at palace events. She prefers light makeup, a simple hairstyle, and minimal jewelry. Melly immediately exclaims that this won't do. She insists that today she needs to look more glamorous than usual, since Miss Serena will be at the ball and is sure to appear in a lavish outfit. She asks to be allowed to help. Erin agrees and asks her to get everything ready. Melly happily replies that she'll go get everything she needs for her makeup right away. A few minutes later, she explains that she slightly intensified the lip color so the look would better match the outfit. Seeing herself in the mirror, the main character is surprised and says it's as if she's looking at a stranger. Then she sincerely thanks Melly. Melly smiles and replies that she hardly did anything, since her mistress is already very beautiful. The Marquise glances at her watch and realizes it's almost time. The Duke will be here soon, and she needs to get ready. She tells her maid to take a break. Erin apologizes for being late and asks Calix if he's been waiting long. The Marquise notices his gaze and asks why he's looking at her that way. She wonders if she looks strange and explains that Melly did her makeup. Calix replies that she is so beautiful that she literally blinds him. After saying this, he offers her his hand. The Marquise says she must return the favor. At that moment, she notices that Calix is dressed unusually, and she doesn't understand why this makes her a little nervous. Once at the ball, the prince catches himself thinking that he is bored, and he even begins to regret coming. The butler announces the arrival of the Duke of Royton and Lady Brizia. When Raymond sees the heroine, he is genuinely surprised. The aristocrats around them also do not hide their surprise. The Marquise looks so different that it is hard to recognize her at first glance. Erin greets the Duke. He replies that he didn't expect to see her at such an event and is surprised that she has already found a partner. The Marquise calmly points out that he himself has come with Lady Serena and asks why she isn't allowed to appear with a partner. The Duke is stunned and clearly annoyed. Calix intervenes and says that the lady is absolutely right. He reminds him that the divorce is final, and the Duke no longer has the right to interfere in her life. Serena turns to His Highness and says that she was the one who invited Lady Erin. She explains that she ran into her on the way, and upon hearing about the ball, received a promise that she would bake a cake. She adds that she couldn't just accept the cake, so she sent an invitation. At the same time, she assures him that she didn't know the lady would be coming with the Archduke. Hearing this, the main character realizes that Serena is using her usual trick again. She's pretending that Erin asked to be invited herself. But now Erin decides she won't put up with this anymore. Erin calmly explains that it was actually the other way around. It was Serena who first asked her to bake the cake, since it could help promote the café. She was swamped with work, but she couldn't say no. The Marquise asks if Serena received the cake. She adds that she tried her best, so she was surprised it wasn't served at the ball. Serena replies that she had the cake taken to a separate room, so the guests could try it during the intermission. Erin says that because of her, the break between dances dragged on, and decides to leave. At that moment, she realizes she feels lighter, saying everything she thinks turned out to be unexpectedly pleasant, and she regrets not having done so sooner. The Marquise notices that Calix is smiling and asks what's the matter. He replies that she looks genuinely happy. The girl asks if it's really that obvious. The young gentleman says that she is behaving much better now than she did back when she lived in the palace. The girl thinks that she has learned this largely thanks to Calyx. The prince turns to her and congratulates her on her return to society as Lady Erin. Then he asks if she would do him the honor of being his partner for the first dance. The bright lights of the lamps, the luxurious attire, and the attentive glances of those around them create a special atmosphere. The heroine realizes that her former self would surely have refused. But now she agrees and says she enjoys being with him, feeling that she is finally following her heart's call. Erin tells the young gentleman that he carries himself with confidence. Hearing this, he asks with a slight smile if she really thought he couldn't dance at all. The Marquise replies that she simply hadn't had the chance to see him dance before. Calyx calmly explains that previously, he simply hadn't found anyone he truly wanted to ask to dance. Serena notices that His Highness is watching the couple intently and suggests that he step out into the ballroom and join the dance. The Archduke turns to the lady and says that it has been a true honor to dance with her. After these words, he gently kisses her hand. Serena announces a short break, then adds that light refreshments and drinks are already waiting for the guests in a separate room. A cake baked personally by Lady Erin has also been prepared there. The Marquise asks His Highness if he would like to go with her. Calyx replies that he will wait a moment because it seems his brother wants to speak with him. He then adds that he has already instructed the servants to do everything she asked. The Duke's mistress asks the maid irritably why the cake hasn't been brought out yet. She reminds her that she had ordered it to be set out in advance. The head maid apologizes and explains that the maid in charge was apparently too busy and simply forgot. Serena apologizes to Lady Erin, saying she should have checked everything herself. The Marquise calmly replies that nothing terrible has happened. The mistress thanks her for her understanding, then orders the maid to open the box immediately. At that moment, the protagonist thinks that as soon as the box is opened, everyone will see the cake drenched in red liquid. She assumes that this is exactly the outcome Serena was counting on. The Marquise says she sent the cake ahead of time, and then asks if she checked it herself. Upon hearing this, the Duke's mistress begins to explain, but the head maid interrupts her. She says that Lady Serena was busy preparing for the ball and couldn't check everything herself. The box with the cake was simply brought into the hall and not opened. Erin confidently states that when she sent the cake, everything was fine with it. Then she suggests that perhaps one of the maids made a mistake. The main character suddenly says that it's just a sample. The Duke's mistress doesn't understand what she's talking about and asks for an explanation. Erin calmly explains that she brought the real cake herself. Since she had been invited, she decided to deliver it personally. Besides, she had mentioned in a note beforehand that she would prepare a sample. The Marquise adds that if the real cake is displayed in advance, the frosting might melt and ruin everything. She explains that at events like this in the Imperial Palace, they usually display mock-ups, and the guests are served the real dessert later. The main character says that because of the heat, she insisted on using white chocolate for the decoration. So she assumed everyone knew it was a mock-up, and, it seems, jumped to conclusions. Erin says sympathetically that this is perfectly natural, since the lady had never organized events at the Imperial Palace before and couldn't have known such details. At that moment, a servant brings a real cake into the hall, luxurious and flawless. The main character asks Lady Serena if the fake cake can be removed, adding that it's best to take such unpleasant things away immediately. The aristocrats become curious about the taste of this exquisite dessert. After trying it, they note that the white chocolate pairs perfectly with the sponge cake, and the cake could easily rival the creations of the Imperial Palace's pastry chef. One of the ladies says she likes this cake even more, because it isn't too sweet. Erin asks the Duke's mistress if she likes the food. The mistress replies that everything is delicious and thanks Miss Erin. Hearing this, the main character gently points out that she was addressed incorrectly. She explains that while it doesn't matter much in a private conversation, it is rude to address her as Miss Erin at official events. The Marquise adds that, living in the Imperial Palace, one must know and observe such rules of etiquette. Calyx asks the Marquise if everything has been settled. She replies that everything is fine. The young gentleman remarks that she looks pleased. Erin asks how his conversation went and inquires whether he had to endure any unpleasant remarks from His Majesty. He replies that nothing out of the ordinary happened and asks what she plans to do next, since the ball is far from over. The heroine says she's gonna head home. The Archduke immediately offers to walk her home. The Marquise thanks His Highness for coming with her today. He replies that there's no need to thank him. He was interested in coming himself. Then he adds that next time she can feel free to invite him to the ball, he'll be happy to keep her company. Suddenly, the young woman notices that they are taking a different route, and the path seems unfamiliar to her. However, the young gentleman calmly explains that they are heading to his estate. The heroine is surprised, and he asks why she looks that way. He then explains that after the ball, it is customary to have a light snack first, and only then return home. Erin agrees, but deep down she begins to wonder if he has other intentions. She feels that he is too gentle and attentive, and this kindness evokes strange, not entirely understandable feelings in her. Calyx says he has already instructed the servants to prepare a light supper. He adds that he hopes she will enjoy it. When the heroine sees the table set, she is genuinely surprised. The young gentleman asks if she likes it. The Marquise replies that everything looks simply wonderful. The Archduke explains that he asked for just a little of everything to be prepared, because he doesn't know her tastes. The girl recalls that he had mentioned a light dinner and realizes that preparing all of this was actually quite a challenge. The Marquise notes to herself how attentive and thoughtful he is. His Majesty asks if she likes the food. After tasting a bite, the young woman says that with the arrival of the heat, dishes like this would be a great addition to her Café Pun's menu. Kalich says with a slight smile that she has become a true cafe owner during this time, since even now she thinks of it as her own business, hyungsunim. Hearing this, the main character recalls that hyungsunim is a term of address for an older brother's wife. She notices that he is calling her that again, even though he used to address her as Lady Erin. The Archduke explains that he didn't want to use that form of address in that setting. The lady replies that, in any case, she had a wonderful time today, and she thanks him once again. The Marquise says she hasn't felt this calm in a long time. She recalls how, after getting married, she became a duchess, lived in a palace, then went through a divorce, and opened her own cafe. The main character realizes that an incredible number of events have taken place in her life in such a short time. Kalich looks at her intently and asks what she's thinking about. She replies that she just realized how quickly time flies. Not long ago, she couldn't have imagined leaving the palace and opening her own cafe. Erin quietly adds that it would have been better to have achieved all this sooner, when her parents were still around. The young man says he has one more gift for her. He explains that he happened to see it in an antique shop and immediately thought he would definitely give it to her the next time they met. The heroine sees a music box. At that moment, a familiar melody plays in her mind, a little fuzzy but so dear and warm. She realizes that this is the very box her father made by hand and gave to her mother. It's the only thing in the world they ever had to sell because of their debts. Erin asks Kalich how he knew about it. He replies that she told him about it herself and even hummed the tune, then asks if she remembers. Hearing this, the heroine recalls the moment when she baked a lemon cake at night and they ate it together. Then Kalich asked what the melody was. She explained that it was an Erden song her mother often hummed. The song had been passed down from generation to generation, and each person sang it a little differently. The girl adds that her father had to put in a lot of effort to write down the notes. After that, he made a music box and gave it to her mother. The young man asks with interest if he really made it himself and says he's always been curious about what it looks like. Erin replies that they lost it, and now it's impossible to see it. The surprised Marquise asks the Archduke if he truly still remembers this. At that moment, she recalls how, after her parents' departure and her divorce, it felt as though she had lost absolutely everything. Back then, she was certain that the only path ahead was to start all over again. The heroine realizes that the last 9 years, after which she had nothing left, seemed to have been wasted. This feeling leaves a heaviness and a quiet sadness in her soul, and suddenly she says that the young gentleman reminds her of a real magician. Hearing this, Kalich smiles. The girl adds that he always appears by her side whenever she's having a particularly hard time. The Crown Prince remarks that people usually say in such cases that someone resembles a prince. Then he gently says that the most important thing is that she liked the gift, hyungsunim. The heroine asks him to just call her Erin, and she immediately emphasizes that she is no longer his hyungsunim. That same day at the Brennan estate, the Crown Prince asks his brother point-blank what he's up to. He's particularly interested in why his brother showed up at the ball with Erin. Kalich replies that he finds such suspicions unpleasant. He calmly explains that she herself asked him to be her partner at the ball. Raymond objects, arguing that a woman who knows only court etiquette could not have made such a request on her own. Upon hearing this, Kalich asks what exactly he means. He notes that his brother clearly sees her in a completely different light. Then the Crown Prince asks if he means to say that he knows his ex-wife better than he does. His brother replies that she is Lady Erin, and calling someone you've already divorced your wife is strange, to say the least. At that moment, the prince thinks he's had enough of all this. He heads to Serena's room and asks her directly if it's true that she invited Erin. The mistress tries to explain something, but he cuts her off abruptly, demanding that she stop talking nonsense. He declares that he knows about her attempt to put Erin into an eternal sleep and warns her that this is the last time he will tolerate such behavior. Serena defends herself, saying she thought that if Erin disappeared, the emperor would allow them to be together. The prince asks irritably if she really hopes that old man will change his mind. He reminds her that even when he didn't have a fiancé, he still wasn't allowed to marry her, and wonders if she's really that naive. Raymond warns his mistress not to go near Erin again without his permission. After that, he leaves, leaving her alone. Serena flies into a rage. She exclaims that she doesn't understand who Erin is, since Raymond himself said he was tired of her. In her anger, she begins to smash the furniture in the room. At that moment, the head maid enters the room and speaks gently to her mistress. She tries to calm her down and says she'll definitely come up with a solution. Hearing this, Serena asks irritably what can possibly be done if the Duke has forbidden anyone to touch Erin. The maid suggests changing their approach. Serena immediately asks what exactly she has in mind. The maid explains that they can persuade Erin to leave the capital of her own accord and asks if that isn't the best option. Meanwhile, Calix helps the lady into the carriage and asks if she's sure she can make it there alone. She replies that everything will be fine since he's arranged an escort and adds that he's worrying too much. Erin thanks the prince for the evening and says that if he stops by her cafe, she'll treat him to a delicious dessert. The Archduke replies that he'll look forward to their next meeting. A servant announces that they have arrived. Suddenly, the girl notices an unfamiliar carriage parked in front of her cafe. Raymond steps out of the carriage and says she's finally back. He glances at the carriage bearing the Royton seal and realizes she's been at the Calix estate all this time. Erin asks what brought him here. He asks her to spare him a few minutes, and they go into the cafe together. The Marquise asks what business he has here. She immediately adds that it's late, and she'd like to wrap up the conversation as quickly as possible. The Duke says he heard about the unpleasant incident at the ball. He understands that she has been harassed not only today, but on previous occasions as well, and assures her that nothing like this will happen again. Raymond adds that if something like this happens again, she should tell him right away and not put up with it. Erin asks if that's all he wanted to say. At that moment, she thinks about how she put up with all of this precisely because of him. Then she asks him to leave, reminding him that it's already late and she has a lot to do at the cafe tomorrow. The Duke asks her to wait. She notes to herself that he has arrived so late, as if it were perfectly normal, and doesn't even understand the basic rules of courtesy and consideration for others. The heroine coldly asks if she needs to show him where the door is. After that, she gets up and walks away. Suddenly, Raymond stops her and says he needs to tell her something important. The Marquise demands that he let her go before she calls the guards. The Duke lets go of her hand and says he came to apologize, but didn't expect to be treated this way. The main character wonders to herself if this is how someone who wants to apologize would behave. Then she asks him directly if he really thought she'd be happy about his unannounced visit at such a late hour. Raymond is surprised by her words. She calmly asks if they aren't strangers to each other now. The Crown Prince says with a slight smile that he doesn't even know, since the Emperor still considers them husband and wife. He explains that the Emperor has refused to recognize the divorce without his permission and even avoids meeting with him on official business. The Duke declares that she must go with him to the palace. At that moment, the heroine realizes the true reason for his visit. She realizes that he couldn't care less about how Serena treated her, and that he is not the type to offer sincere apologies. Erin asks why she should go at his request. She points out that, legally, everything is already settled. The Emperor didn't say anything to her privately, which means he has effectively acknowledged the divorce. Besides, he promised not to insist on her return. The heroine adds that he was the one who started the proceedings without permission and thereby angered her father, so it's his problem. She makes it clear that she is under no obligation to go with him to the palace. Raymond is surprised and asks why she's talking to him like that. He says she agreed to it herself and wonders if she's just trying to take her anger out on him. The Crown Prince insists that Calix told him everything and that she was the one who asked him to be her partner at the ball. Then he presses her, asking if it will make her feel better if she makes him angry. The heroine doesn't understand why he suddenly brought this up. She replies that he's talking as if she shouldn't have gone to the ball with Calix. Raymond slams his fist down on the table and, raising his voice, says it's obvious. He points out that they've only recently divorced and asks what people will think. Erin calmly replies that this is coming from a man who brought his mistress to the palace and lived with her even before the wedding. He exclaims irritably that these are completely different situations. The Marquise explains that compared to him, these are indeed different situations, and emphasizes that she is free, since their marriage is already over. The Crown Prince declares that even if he allows her to see other men, it must under no circumstances be Calix. Upon hearing this, the main character doesn't understand why he treats his brother that way. She feels there's more to it than just a bad relationship, and she asks when he started talking about needing permission in the first place. Erin coldly states that it's none of his business who she associates with, and that such words upset her. After that, she opens the door and tells him to leave. Raymond says he'll be back. But the Marquise can think of nothing but how tired she is, and how much she wants to go up to her bedroom as soon as possible, take a bath, and lie down to rest. Suddenly, she hears a strange noise coming from the kitchen. Curious, she goes to check, but finds no one there and decides she must have imagined it. The next morning, Melly greets the lady, wishing her a good day. She gently adds that if yesterday was too exhausting, she can take it easy today and not overwork herself. Erin confidently replies that she's fine and that there's still work to be done. Today, she needs to prepare 3 new types of desserts. Then she asks Melly if she's put away the chocolate roses that were by the window. The girl says she didn't touch anything. She explains that the window was open that morning, and she assumed the lady herself had tidied up the kitchen and moved the sweets to another spot. The Marquise is surprised and immediately says she didn't open the window. Melly suggests that maybe a cat snuck inside and ate the chocolate. But the lady wonders if cats even eat chocolate, and the thought flashes through her mind that perhaps some wild animals had gotten into the house. A woman she knows walks into the cafe and reminds her that last time she bought 2 desserts and 1 scone from them. The main character greets Miss Fiona and notes that she's stopped by again. With a smile, the woman admits that the desserts here are so delicious she simply can't resist. Then, with a lighthearted joke, she adds that her dresses are starting to feel a bit tight, and she'll soon have to order some new outfits. Erin thanks her for her kind words and invites her to sit down while she prepares the order. Miss Fiona clarifies that she'll be taking everything with her today and asks that the desserts be packed carefully. Melly turns to the lady and says that she'll handle the packing herself today. Miss Fiona remarks on how quickly time flies and reminds everyone that the summer festival begins next week. Upon hearing this, the protagonist realizes with surprise just how quickly the days have slipped by. The summer festival in the capital begins at the very start of summer and lasts until the rainy season. The night market on the waterfront is particularly popular, attracting merchants from all corners of the empire who bring the most unusual and rare goods. Usually, this festival is attended by commoners, so after Erin moved into the palace, she hadn't had the chance to go there herself. But now she finds herself thinking that she no longer has to worry about what others think. Fiona asks with interest if the Marquise would like to go to the festival. She replies that she would love to, but she's not sure if she'll have the time. Then the customer asks the next question, who she plans to go with. The Marquise calmly remarks that she had thought of going alone. Upon hearing this, Fiona immediately points out that such celebrations aren't nearly as enjoyable when you're on your own. With a subtle hint, she asks if there isn't a gentleman she knows who might keep her company. At that moment, the heroine notes to herself how much Fiona loves rumors and hints. Erin recalls Calix and his words that if anything interesting happened, she could call him. But she immediately realizes that this isn't an option. It wouldn't be fitting for a duke to appear at celebrations for commoners, and besides, wherever he showed up, he'd be recognized right away. Then the Marquise thinks of Melly and figures she might like the idea of going together. Besides, it would be a great chance to spend the day off together. Suddenly, a stranger walks into the cafe and asks if the lady is the owner of the place. Erin asks how she can help and at that moment notices a brooch with an embroidered tower on him. From his appearance, she guesses that he is an official, and, judging by all appearances, one of low rank. The man introduces himself as the district manager and says he has come to inspect the sanitary conditions. The main character is surprised and explains that the cafe has only recently opened and has already passed all the necessary inspections. He replies that he's aware of that, but this particular inspection is unannounced. Erin thinks to herself that if they'd been warned in advance, it wouldn't really count as unannounced. Then she calmly suggests starting the inspection in the kitchen. The stranger is surprised, since the kitchen is located outside. Erin explains that she prepares drinks inside, and there simply isn't enough room there for desserts. She confidently adds that she doesn't see any problem with this. The Marquise considers that in the future, she could renovate, expand the space, and set up a full-fledged kitchen. But for now, she doesn't have the funds for that, so she has to make do with what she has. Erin shows him the kitchen and explains that this is where she bakes her desserts. At that moment, she feels relieved that she managed to tidy everything up that morning. The official looks around and says that everything looks fine. The lady offers to show him the contents of the drawers and the kitchen utensils, but he waves her off and asks if there's anything else here. The main character begins to suspect that he might want to check the desserts themselves. She offers him a taste of one of them and mentions that she has a cake prepared for sale. The man objects sharply and says that's not what he meant at all. He then remarks irritably that she's too slow on the uptake. He explains that she probably hasn't figured out all the nuances yet, since she just opened the place. He adds that running a business in this neighborhood requires a special kind of effort. And he's not talking about desserts at all, but about a different kind of effort, the meaning of which should be clear to her. Hearing this, Erin immediately realizes why he came. His indifference to the state of the cafe and the lack of any documents make it clear that this isn't a real inspection. The man claims he won't be able to write a favorable review without concrete proof of her integrity. He then asks, with a hint of insinuation, what she would do if the report included findings of serious violations and unsanitary conditions. The main character asks directly if he wants money. The inspector replies with a satisfied look that she's finally starting to get it. He adds that not only money, but any jewelry would do. The Marquise calmly says that she understands him perfectly, but she immediately adds that she doesn't have a penny to bribe him, and she coldly declares that if he didn't come for a real inspection, then he can leave and write whatever he wants in the report. The man flies into a rage and declares that if he writes a negative review, her cafe will be shut down within a month. Then he snaps, asking if she's prepared for that outcome. Erin doesn't understand why he's getting so worked up. She calmly reminds him that she's already said he can do whatever he wants, and she asks if he'll run into trouble himself if he doesn't accept a bribe from her. The main character is well aware that if the report is bad, the cafe could indeed be shut down, but giving a bribe means creating even more serious problems, up to and including the risk of ending up behind bars. Either way, it's a dangerous choice, with no easy way out. The Marquise realizes that if he had come just for the money, he wouldn't have put on this whole show. She says she doesn't know who sent him, but asks him to leave and not to interfere with her work, nor to drag her into his dirty business. Hearing this, the man bursts into a shout and threatens that she'll regret it. At that moment, Aaron thinks that someone has most likely sent him, and she has only one guess as to who it might be. She thinks of Syria, who had embarrassed herself at the ball just yesterday and, it seems, still can't come to terms with it. The main character asks Melly if she's been waiting long and if she's had a lot on her plate lately. Melly assures her that everything is fine, but adds that the inspector who just left looked extremely displeased and asks what happened. The Marquise explains everything in detail. Upon hearing this, Melly is genuinely surprised and can't understand where such people even come from. Aaron says she's heard of similar cases where inspectors take bribes from business owners, but she never expected to encounter this personally. Melly asks anxiously if everything is okay and whether that person will really write a bad review. The main character confidently replies that it's not that simple. The owners also have a chance to defend themselves. She says they'll need to go to the city office and explain everything before a decision is made to close the cafe. The girl suggests that perhaps someone at the office might be bribed. She offers to ask acquaintances for help and even mentions the Duke, who will surely resolve everything quickly. Aaron feels she already owes Calix too much, so she doesn't want to ask him for another favor. Then Melly suggests another option, asking Mr. Ames. She's sure that, as the head of the Order of Knights, he has plenty of connections in the government. The girl points out that he has already shown interest and even sent a gift. Besides, he's an acquaintance of theirs and is unlikely to refuse to help. And as if by coincidence, at that very moment, Ames himself walks into the cafe. He says that there was no one behind the counter, so he decided to check if anyone was inside, and then asks with a smile if they were just talking about him. Aaron replies that it's been a long time since they last saw each other and asks how he's been, and if he's been too busy. The young gentleman calmly says that he's doing fine, and asks how she's been in return. Ames adds that he heard she was at the ball at the Brennan estate yesterday. He says he found out about it by chance, but was still a little worried about her, so he decided to stop by in person to make sure she was all right. Upon hearing this, the heroine couldn't help but wonder if the rumors about yesterday had spread that quickly. But she calmly says aloud that she's fine, nothing serious happened, and everything has already been settled. She even adds that worrying about Miss Serena is far more important right now. Ames doesn't hide his confusion and says outright that he finds it strange why she's still tormenting Aaron. The Marquise merely sighs in response and admits that she herself can't explain it. After all, it would seem she's already gotten Raymond, whom she dreamed of for so long. The lady asks with a slight smile if he really came here just to ask that question. Then she remarks that he remains as attentive and caring as ever. His childhood friend is a little embarrassed and admits that he wanted to discuss something else. After a pause, he asks if she would like to go with him to the summer festival. These words visibly surprise the Marquise. The young gentleman immediately explains that there is no hidden meaning behind this. It's just that too much has happened lately, and he thinks it would be good for her to take her mind off things for a bit. Ames adds that if she doesn't feel like it, she's free to decline. He immediately notes, however, that her being seen with him might, on the contrary, spark unnecessary rumors. Aaron thinks for a moment and agrees to go with him. She says she hasn't walked through the evening market in a long time, and if he doesn't mind, they can spend this time together. The Marquise realizes that rumors might indeed start, just as he said, but she decides she no longer wants to worry about such things. At that moment, Melly rushes into the room and addresses the lady excitedly. She reports that a letter has just been delivered, and a certain gentleman is inviting her to tea. Ames immediately asks if the letter is from Count Florence. The letter states that the sender has heard about her extraordinary cakes, which have already been served at several receptions. He apologizes for the late invitation, but does so very politely, and asks her to attend a tea party to be held tomorrow at his home. Aaron remarks that, judging by all appearances, the invitation was sent by the Count's wife, and that she has some kind of request for her. The young gentleman asks if she knows her. The Marquise replies that she doesn't know him personally. She has seen Count Florence a few times since he works at the Imperial Palace. His wife, however, rarely attends social events, so they have never met. And, most likely, her request has something to do with the cafe. Ames offers to go with her if she'd like. He explains that he happens to be free tomorrow and would like to accompany her. The young gentleman adds that he can help if anything unexpected happens. Aaron accepts his offer and agrees to go with him. The next day, Aaron and Ames arrive at the Florence estate. The butler greets them respectfully and says that their visit is a great honor. He then invites them inside, as the lady is already waiting. Aaron thanks the Countess for the invitation, but she replies that she is the one who is grateful to them for taking the time to come. Ames looks around and notices that, as far as he can tell, this is a tea party, but he doesn't see any other guests. The Countess explains that she invited only them because she has a personal request. She also says that she is leaving for the capital tonight for 2 weeks, which is why she allowed herself to be so abrupt. Aaron assures her that there's nothing to worry about. She then says she's brought some madeleines and a cake and hopes the Countess will like them. The Countess thanks her and admits that rumors about her desserts have been circulating for a long time, and she's been dreaming of trying them herself. Hearing this, the main character feels a little embarrassed. But the Countess says with a smile that her cakes are truly unusual and very delicious. The Marquise, however, modestly replies that there's nothing special about them. The Countess continues, saying that many people in the capital would like to order desserts from her, and she is no exception. She then mentions that a ball in honor of her birthday will be held in 3 weeks, and she would like to order a special dessert. And that is precisely what her request is. Aaron asks what exactly she means by a special dessert. The Countess asks if she has ever been to the southern lands of the mainland. The lady replies that she hasn't, but she has heard that the kingdom of Artion is located there. She adds that, as far as she knows, the borders have recently opened following the war with the Empire. The Countess confirms that everything said is correct and shares that she herself has only been to the southern coast once. Upon hearing this, Ames asks in surprise, could it be that she was in an enemy country? The lady calmly explains that it happened when she was very young and didn't understand much yet. The main character asks with interest if that was the very same special dessert she had tried there, and at that moment, she realizes she has no idea what kinds of sweets they make in the South. The Countess says that a few days ago she managed to buy some jasmine flowers, but she isn't sure whether they're used to make tea or added to food for their aroma. Aaron admits that this is the first time she has seen jasmine. The woman explains that the flowers were brought from the southern lands. She adds that Aaron may not be aware of this, but her mother comes from an aristocratic family in the kingdom of Artion. The Countess explains that, to avoid social condemnation, she was officially presented as an aristocrat from another southern island. At that moment, the protagonist realizes that this makes perfect sense. After all, Artion and the Empire have long been enemies, and it's better not to reveal such a truth. Aaron recalls that when she lived in the Imperial Palace, she also faced detractors. They tried to reproach her for the fact that her mother came from a small northern people. The Countess admits with a touch of embarrassment that her mother's background had greatly troubled her as a child. And one day, upon learning of a ship secretly setting sail for the south, she impulsively decided to go there. She realizes that it sounds reckless now, but back then, she was incredibly eager to see her mother's homeland with her own eyes. The South Sea turned out to be completely different from the Western Sea she was used to. The white sand, the warm sun, and the truly mesmerizing coastline made a strong impression on her. She remembers walking along the shore, getting hungry, and popping into the first restaurant she came across. She didn't like the food she ordered. It was too spicy, too salty, and had strong herbal aromas. But among all that, there was one dessert whose taste she still cannot forget. The refreshing sweetness of peaches, delicate white cream, clear jelly, and a subtle floral aroma that unfolded with every bite. She says she ordered 3 servings at once, but never figured out what it was made of. And because she didn't speak the language, she couldn't ask the owner. Aaron suggests that it might be whipped cream, but the Countess shakes her head and says that the cream was completely different. Lighter, like congealed milk, with almost none of the usual sweetness. And it was shaped like a leaf. She asks if Aaron knows what kind of dessert it is. The Marquise answers honestly that she can't even imagine. There are too many unknowns, the cream itself, the jelly, and that floral aroma. The Countess sighs and says she expected that answer. But she adds that she did manage to find out about one ingredient used in this dessert. The heroine immediately guesses and asks if it is jasmine. The Countess confirms this and explains that beyond Artion lies the Southern Sea, and beyond that, distant lands where this flower grows. After the war ended and trade was restored, they began bringing it to the capital. Aaron asks permission to examine the flowers more closely. When she opens them, she is met by a fresh, rich, yet soft fragrance. She notes that the scent of jasmine is very pleasant. The Countess adds that in the South, people also brew tea from these flowers. Upon hearing this, the protagonist thinks to herself that such a floral beverage would be a perfect addition to her café menu. The lady explains that she has already tried asking the chefs to recreate that dessert, but they weren't successful. Either the aroma was lost or the taste turned out completely different. And she asks if Aaron could create a dessert that preserves both the taste and the aroma. Aaron honestly replies that she isn't sure yet. Jasmine has a rather intense aroma, and it might not pair well with traditional cakes. So she suggests that a light cream or pudding, similar to the one the Countess mentioned, would be a better fit. Ames asks if there are any clues as to the ingredients in the white cream. The Countess replies that she has tried various versions, but none of them came close to that particular flavor. The young gentleman concludes that the recipe most likely contains ingredients that are hard to find within the Empire. The woman says that if the result isn't quite exact, it's not a problem, and then asks with interest if she can create a dessert that preserves that flavor. Upon hearing this, the main character realizes that she has never tried to come up with new desserts before, and this makes her feel a little nervous. But at the same time, she senses that there is something truly exciting about it. Aaron agrees and confidently replies that she will do her best to fulfill her request. The Countess thanks the lady for listening to her and taking on such a difficult task. She then adds that she will reward her generously and is willing to pay any amount. The Marquise gently objects and says there is no need for that. But then she suddenly remembers that Count Florence works in the administration. Erin says that if she manages to create the right dessert, she'll have a small favor to ask. After that, she asks if she can speak to her husband. The lady asks her childhood friend if he has seen similar flowers in the South. He replies that he doesn't recall anything like that and apologizes for not being able to help. The girl just sighs and says that even she, as the cafe owner, doesn't know of such a thing. Ames asks if there's anything else he can do to help. The lady, with a slight smile, invites him to stop by the cafe sometime and try her desserts. The young man happily agrees and says he's willing to come by every day after work. Hearing this, the girl laughs and replies that occasional visits are enough. At that moment, she can't help but think that he's quite attractive and, at the same time, doesn't seem to be thinking about marriage at all. Erin reflects that Ames surely has no shortage of suitable suitors. The Marquise says she was planning to stop by Emery's shop. She explains that she wants to see if she can buy more jasmine flowers, since creating a new recipe will require a lot of practice. Suddenly, the knight hugs the girl and whispers that he has a feeling someone is watching them. Upon hearing this, the heroine looks around and realizes they are on a busy street. She finds it hard to imagine who might be following them, and she quietly asks when it started. Ames replies that he noticed it the moment they stepped out of the carriage. At first he was unsure, but now he's certain they're being followed. The lady asks how many there are, and he estimates about 2. Judging by their movements, he concludes that they aren't ordinary people, but well-trained knights. The heroine thinks they might be Serena's people. But then she realizes she doesn't have enough influence to call on the knights. Besides, she doubts that Prince Raymond would risk his reputation again. The young gentleman says that, in his opinion, they don't intend to cause any harm, and then asks the lady what she wants to do. The Marquise suggests not taking any drastic action. She explains that if they're just being watched, there's no point in running away, since nothing will happen to them in broad daylight. After that, she adds that she has a hunch. Upon hearing this, Ames asks what she means, but the girl just waves it off, saying it's nothing serious, and suggests they continue on their way. At Erin's shop, they're told that the jasmine leaves are completely sold out. The shopkeeper explains that demand for goods from the South has skyrocketed recently. The lady asks when a new shipment is expected. The clerk replies that they will likely have to wait more than a month. Hearing this, the girl realizes that the Countess's birthday is only 3 months away. Ames suggests looking elsewhere. Erin says they should check out the herb shop on Boyard Street. On the way, she realizes it's not the safest alley, but reassures herself that it's still light out and Ames is with her. Suddenly, Erin spots Calix and is surprised by the encounter. The young gentleman says they ran into each other here completely by chance. The girl doesn't understand what could have brought the Archduke to such a shop. Ames greets His Highness. The prince asks if he is the head of the Leflin Order, and then says he is pleased to meet him and has long wanted to meet him. The knight calmly replies that they had already met at the Imperial Palace a month ago. Calix coldly explains that he often forgets those who are of no particular importance to him. The heroine senses the tension in the air and can't help but wonder if they're on bad terms. Calix turns to Erin and asks what she's doing here. He wonders if she came for ingredients. The lady explains that she was going to go to another shop because she couldn't find what she needed here. Calix says he'll walk her out because he wanted to discuss something important. He adds that this isn't a good place for a conversation and suggests they talk on the way. Erin apologizes and says she already has plans for tonight. Then she invites him to meet her at a cafe later that evening. Hearing this, Ames says it's fine and suggests she go. The girl doesn't understand him at first, so he explains that he'll just stop by to see her tomorrow. The heroine asks His Highness if he was the one who sent knights to follow her today. Hearing this, he immediately denies it. Then the girl asks another question. How did he know she was at the shop? Calix replies that his servants told him. The girl is surprised and asks how the servants could have known that. He then says that they are guarding her. Upon hearing this, Erin concludes that he is watching her after all. But the young man objects and explains that it's merely for her protection, not surveillance. Calix apologizes and says he was just worried, remembering how she had been in danger last time. The girl thanks him for his concern and adds that Ames was with her today. Hearing this, the young gentleman says with a slight sneer that he didn't know Commander Leflin was such a skilled knight. He even adds that he'll test that out in a duel sometime. Erin doesn't understand why he's suddenly become so irritated and asks what important matter he wanted to discuss. Calix asks if his brother has visited her. She replies that he came by that evening after the ball and immediately asks how he knew. A thought flashes through her mind. Is he spying on her there as well? The prince asks what exactly they talked about. The lady replies that nothing special happened. He merely suggested going to the palace to ask the emperor for permission to divorce, but she refused. The Archduke asks if that was all, and whether he said anything else. The heroine replies that he left immediately, and then asks again what Calix wanted to talk about. Calix says there's one more important thing. He tells her that a night market is opening next week, and asks if she'd like to go with him. Hearing this, the girl asks in surprise if this is really the important conversation he mentioned. But he assures her that it is indeed important. Then the lady admits that she has already agreed to go there with someone else. Calix says he already suspects as much, and that person is most likely Leflin. He adds that she'll definitely be safe with him. The prince remarks with a touch of irony that the head of the order must not have any urgent business since he can afford to stroll through the bazaar. The girl senses a faint hint of mockery in his words. When they enter the shop, the salesman asks what she needs. The lady asks if they have jasmine flowers. He replies that they usually do, but they were recently sold out, and now there are none left. The man shows her some herbs brought from the south and explains that he didn't order them in large quantities. He thought they would be used only for perfumes, and indeed, a perfume shop bought up most of them. Erin sighs and says it's a shame, but there's nothing to be done. She thinks about how she had a hard time finding a place to buy jasmine, and even here, there wasn't any. Now the only option left is the night market, and if she can't find anything there either, it will be very difficult to make the dessert. Suddenly, her gaze catches a small bottle filled with unusual petals. She's surprised, because she's never seen such dark leaves before. Erin opens the jar, smells a strange scent, and tries to figure out what it is. At first, she thinks it's agglutination, but then she has her doubts, because the pattern is too distinct. After that, she asks the vendor what kind of leaves these are. The man explains that these are leaves from the Black Forest. He liked their scent, so he put them up for sale, but buyers aren't interested in them. The main character thinks about how she has never been to the northern lands, and she feels a little sorry to just walk away. In the end, she takes out some coins and decides to buy the leaves. Calix notices that the lady made up her mind very quickly and, with a slight smile, asks if that's why she came to this particular shop. Erin replies that, unfortunately, she didn't find what she was looking for. She explains that the flowers she needs can only be bought abroad, and similar ones have long since sold out. The prince asks why she needs such rare flowers. The girl calmly replies that she needs more jasmine for a new recipe, but it's impossible to get hold of. She then adds that this dessert is for the countess. The heroine admits that she has an idea of exactly what she wants to make, but she still doesn't know what kind of dessert it is, and she doesn't have a recipe. After that, she turns to Calix and cautiously asks if she can ask him for help. When they arrive at the estate, the young master shows her a secret passage and explains that she can use it to slip inside unnoticed and leave just as quietly. Meanwhile, Erin considers that she could obtain official permission, but that would take too long. She realizes that only members of the Imperial family have unrestricted access to the Imperial library. Once inside, the girl is amazed by the sheer number of books around her. She assumes there must be books about Arteon among them, since the southern lands had long been enemies of the Empire, which is why the spread of their culture was strictly limited. Erin decides to look for books on the cuisine and recipes of the southern lands, hoping to find a clue about the dessert she needs. But after flipping through several volumes, she finds neither a recipe nor even a hint of useful information. The lady begins to feel disappointed, as she had hoped to at least learn how to use jasmine, and at that moment, it dawns on her that she has almost no time left. Suddenly, her gaze falls on a book describing the Erden people and desserts from various regions. Calix asks what exactly she is looking for. The girl replies that she is trying to find books on the cuisine of the southern lands and the recipe for the dessert the Countess mentioned, but so far without success. The young gentleman asks what the dessert looked like and casually mentions that he himself has tried many local dishes when he visited those parts. Upon hearing this, the Marquise is genuinely surprised, since they are talking about a hostile nation. She realizes that citizens of the Empire are forbidden from traveling there and asks how he managed to get there in the first place. Calix replies that he used the same method as the Countess. Hearing this, the lady asks skeptically if he really went there in secret. The young gentleman calmly explains that no one revealed his identity and no problems arose. But to himself, he thinks that if he tells her more, she might get seriously angry with him. Erin asks what he would have done if something had happened to him there. He admits that he really was too careless. Marquise notices his smile and asks why he's smiling, since she's being serious. In response, the guy gently says that he appreciates her concern and promises to come back safe and sound, even if he ends up in a dangerous place. Hearing this, the heroine objects and says that it's best not to get into dangerous situations at all. Calix chuckles softly and remarks that they've strayed from the main topic, then asks again what the dessert looked like. Erin describes it as a white cream served on leaves, with something resembling jelly inside, and the whole thing smelled of jasmine. Then she asks if he is familiar with such a dessert. The young gentleman says that he thinks he tried something similar at the Southport Bazaar. Hearing this, the Marquise realizes that this is exactly what the Countess was talking about. The prince remarks that it wasn't cream at all, but just then they hear someone entering the library. The girl suggests they go check who it is. Calix quickly grabs her by the hand and pulls her into cover. The lady is confused and asks what's going on. He quietly explains that if they go out now, they'll run into a very unpleasant person. Soon, the crown prince's voice rings out, assuring them there's no need to worry. No one will come here, and at that moment, the heroine realizes it's Raymond. His Highness turns to his companion and says that none of this is at all like what he had promised earlier, and asks if he hadn't guaranteed that he would deliver the item in question. The stranger calmly replies that everything is correct, but only on the condition that the terms of their agreement are honored. Raymond coldly asks if he intends to break the contract. The man replies that since his part hasn't been fulfilled, it can't be any other way, and asks in return if he isn't right. He states bluntly that the mission has failed, and he has no choice left. The Crown Prince cuts him off irritably and declares that there was never a true alliance between them. He adds that if the man truly wanted to break the contract, he wouldn't have come here in person. The man agrees and says that they cannot simply give up on someone as valuable as him. Meanwhile, the main character suspects that Raymond has clearly struck some kind of secret deal, but the conversation remains too vague. She quietly tells Calix that things have gotten even stranger, since they've unexpectedly gone into hiding and now can't leave. The young man explains that his brother seems to be engaged in an important conversation, and it would be rude to interrupt. But he also realizes that eavesdropping is wrong too. Then he notices that it seems they are already leaving. Erin catches herself, thinking that everything happened so quickly that she didn't even notice how she and Calix had ended up so close, his breath barely brushing her ear. When everything calms down, the Marquise abruptly pushes him away and tells him he can let her go, then hurries off. But suddenly her dress catches on a bookshelf, and it nearly falls on her if Calix hadn't caught it in time. Raymond hears a strange noise, decides to check it out, and discovers them. He looks at them with interest, clearly not understanding what they're doing there. The Crown Prince coldly declares that he will not tolerate such behavior and asks if they realize where they are. Erin asks him to wait and tries to explain that it's a misunderstanding. Raymond responds by asking what exactly he just saw and wonders how she dared to behave that way in the Imperial Palace. At that moment, the heroine realizes that, just as before, he has no intention of listening to her. She snaps back, asking who then brought his mistress to the palace and lived with her. The Crown Prince replies irritably that she's at it again. He says that having a mistress is commonplace among aristocrats and members of the Imperial family, and he's tired of her making a fuss about it. He then adds that it's time for her to stop acting like a child. Hearing this, Erin wonders if he has ever once in all 9 years treated her as an equal. Then she calmly says that he has misunderstood everything and emphasizes that she is not his property, neither now nor back when they were married. The Marquise firmly asks the Crown Prince not to try to control her or interfere in her personal life. These words anger Raymond, and he is about to say something, but Calix steps in front of the lady and firmly declares that, even though he is the older brother, he will not allow Erin to be insulted. The Crown Prince merely smirks and coldly asks how he dares to speak to him that way. Calix calmly replies that he can complain to grandfather, but then he'll have to reveal the secret meeting in the restricted zone as well. Hearing this, the heroine is surprised, for she has no idea what he's talking about. Raymond, not wanting to continue the argument, turns away and leaves. Erin immediately asks Calix what he just said to his brother. He pretends not to understand what she's talking about, so she asks when this place became off-limits. The prince explains that it was just recently, and now even members of the Imperial family can only enter here with permission. Upon hearing this, the Marquis says he should have warned her right away. Calix replies that it was her request, and he had hoped they could slip in quietly and find what they needed quickly. He then apologizes for making her listen to his brother's words, but the girl assures him that he is not to blame for anything. Erin asks who the man standing next to Duke Raymond was. The young gentleman suddenly asks if she would be sad if his brother were to suddenly fall into an eternal sleep. The girl looks at him in surprise and asks what he's talking about. The prince explains that he is simply suggesting she imagine a situation in which something might happen to his brother. At that moment, the heroine began to think about how the war with the southern lands had already ended, and the political situation had finally stabilized. And she couldn't understand at all why he had suddenly brought this up. A thought flashed through her mind. Could he be planning to claim the throne? After all, it had previously seemed that Kalesa had no interest in power at all. Erin suddenly caught herself wondering if she would feel sad if Raymond were to one day fall into an eternal sleep, and almost immediately, she answered herself that she would most likely feel relieved. She couldn't care less about the Duke's fate, and she even noted that she didn't want to waste her time on such conversations. The main character turns to the young gentleman and calmly tells him that she doesn't want him to put himself in danger. She also adds that she doesn't want anything to get in the way of her business, since it's her long-held dream, and she'd only just opened the cafe. Calix confidently replies that he will protect her so that nothing happens to her or her dream. Hearing his words, the heroine immediately realized that he had misunderstood her. After all, she had been telling him not to get himself into dangerous situations, but he had taken it completely the wrong way. Erin decides to change the subject and asks the prince to tell her about the dessert he tried in the southern lands. She gently reminds him that they had just gotten to that part. Calix explains that the dessert didn't contain cream at all, but some kind of fruit that grows in foreign lands. Upon hearing this, the lady is genuinely surprised, as she realizes that such a fruit is not available in the Empire. Even if she were to order it by sea, it would surely spoil during the long journey. The young gentleman calmly reassures her and tells her not to worry. He then explains that these fruits can withstand long journeys and don't spoil so quickly. Erin asks him with interest if he knows the name of this fruit. The prince replies that he doesn't remember what it's called, but he's sure he'd recognize it immediately if he saw it. Then, unexpectedly, he suggests they go to the night market during the summer festival. The Marquise asks if he really doesn't know the name. Calix asks with a slight smile if she really doubts his words. He then explains that he tried the fruit by accident and only remembers what it looked like. The heroine says she agrees to go with him to the night market. Hearing this, the guy immediately asks, "What about Chief Lefnin?" The Marquise replies that she can meet with him another day. She adds that she cannot break a promise she has already made. Aaron says they should finish their business as soon as possible and leave. And at that moment, she thinks she needs to find another way to get jasmine flowers. Suddenly, an idea strikes the girl, and she says she thinks she knows someone who might have plenty of jasmine. She assumes it's the emperor himself, since he loves tea and is always on the lookout for rare herbs. The lady recalls hearing that in the south, people brew tea from jasmine. And since the emperor had recently been to Arteon, it's quite possible that he brought back quite a few rare varieties. The Marquise decides she should write to His Majesty's senior servant and try to buy some of this tea. Calix immediately offers to deliver the letter personally, thinking it will be faster that way. The girl is surprised and a little embarrassed, saying she feels awkward asking him for such a favor. The prince calmly replies that it's not difficult at all for him, since he's always happy to help her. He also adds that if she ever runs into any trouble, she should come to him first. The young gentleman looks closely at the lady and asks what's wrong. She replies that she just suddenly remembered their youth and says she can't believe how much they've grown up. Calix says he's always wanted to be that kind of person. He adds that he truly enjoys taking care of her. One weekend morning, the main character, lying in bed, realizes she hasn't allowed herself to sleep this late in a long time. Erin reflects that all she can do now is wait for a reply from the head servant regarding the jasmine blossoms. When the girl comes into the kitchen, she decides to work on the dessert the Countess ordered. And immediately she remembers Calix's words that the dessert contained fruit, not cream. Erin concludes that she should come up with a dessert with a jasmine aroma, but she realizes that a cake won't work because it's hard to preserve the delicate floral scent in it, so she needs something simpler and lighter. She ponders that perhaps the best option would be to add jasmine to a light milk blancmange or to a pudding with whipped cream. In the end, she decides to start with the pudding. First, Erin brings the milk to a boil and adds jasmine flowers. Then she adds sugar and whipped cream, mixes everything thoroughly, and then adds the egg yolk and stirs again. Finally, she places the mixture in a preheated oven. The main character leaves the finished pudding to cool for about an hour. After that, she decides to taste what she's made. Suddenly, the lady hears a voice at the door. Someone is asking if anyone is home. When she opens the door, she finds a young woman standing there, who tells her she has brought the fruit she ordered. Erin recognizes her. It's the same girl who came with her sister to pick up a cake. She smiles and says they haven't seen each other in a long time, then asks if she's working as a delivery person. The girl replies that it's her job, and she likes it. The lady invites her inside and says she'll pay her right away. As soon as the guest walks in, her eyes immediately fall on the pudding. She asks curiously if it's for sale. Erin replies that this is her first test batch. The girl is surprised and says she's never seen anyone make pudding from scratch. Upon hearing this, the main character pauses to think, since pudding is usually made at home, and since she says something like that, perhaps she had a difficult childhood. Erin speculates that the girl might have lost her parents at a young age, given that she's working at such a young age. The main character gently asks if she likes pudding and if she'd like to try some. The girl looks a little embarrassed and replies that she didn't bring any money with her today. Erin smiles and says she doesn't have to pay. She explains that she's currently developing a new menu, and if the girl tries the dessert and shares her thoughts, it would be a big help to her. The girl is surprised and asks again if she really can try it. The Marquise says she'll bring a clean spoon right away, then hands her the pudding and adds that it's drizzled with caramel syrup on top. The lady decides to try it too, and notices a light jasmine aroma. But because of the milk and cream, the flavor seems too simple. She thinks the dessert turned out poorly, and she becomes curious about how the caramel tastes. After that, she asks the girl about her impressions. The girl replies with a smile that it's very tasty. According to her, the sweet caramel and delicate pudding go perfectly together, and she's sure that many people will enjoy this dessert. Upon hearing this, the protagonist realizes that nothing was said about the floral aroma. Most likely, it was overpowered by the rich caramel flavor. Then she gets the idea to try replacing the cream with fruit. Erin asks if she has any fruit from the southern lands. She adds that even dried fruit or nuts would work. The girl replies that they did have such fruit, but no one bought it, and it's most likely already been thrown out. The Marquise asks if they were white. The girl replies that they were brown and assumes they probably don't taste very good. At that moment, the heroine simply sighs to herself, realizing that such ingredients are indeed very hard to come by. When the girl leaves, the Marquise thinks about the dessert again and decides to continue working. Suddenly, the main character hears Ames calling out to her. She immediately remembers that he was just about to stop by today. The girl notices what he's holding and asks about it. He replies that he brought a small snack because he thought she hadn't had lunch yet. At that moment, the main character realizes that this is true, because she had been completely absorbed in cooking since early morning and hadn't eaten a thing. Aaron invites him to come in quickly and lightly touches his arm. But at that very moment, the same dark forest she had seen earlier in the shop flashes before her eyes. She asks anxiously what's wrong with him and where it hurts. Ames abruptly asks Aaron to step away from him. His body twists in pain, and he falls to the floor. The girl, completely bewildered, doesn't understand what's happening. Suddenly, the heroine notices blood on his shoulder. The thought flashes through her mind that the monsters, poison, might have triggered a new attack. She realizes that his condition has become much worse than before, since the wound now looks significantly larger. The girl can't understand why the illness is progressing so rapidly. After all, just a short while ago everything was fine, and suddenly her condition took a sharp turn for the worse, as if on cue. The Marquise quickly realizes that now is not the time for speculation. First, she needs to hide him. She closes the door, knowing that if word gets out about the poisoning by the monsters, the people from the temple might seize him and sentence him to death. Suddenly, the poison envelops the girl's hand, then slowly fades away. The heroine doesn't understand what happened and decides that perhaps the poison in Ames's body has disappeared as well. Aaron notices something that looks like a black haze near the wound. She decides it's just a trick of the light and doesn't think much of it. Lady says she just saw a black forest. She recalls having a similar vision before in the spice shop. The girl doesn't understand why this is happening again and begins to think that the monsters, poison, might be connected to the northern forest. At that moment, the protagonist remembers that the ingredients for the poison are brought from the north. She suspects that the leaves she bought might somehow help Ames. Erin is skeptical, but she realizes she has no other choice. As she picks up the leaves, she realizes she doesn't even know how to use them properly. The lady takes the milk left over from the pudding and decides to brew the leaves in it, hoping it will work. The Marquise notices that An's condition is worsening. She realizes that if nothing is done, he might fall into an eternal sleep, so she offers him the prepared mixture to drink. The girl sees that he has drunk it, but there is no reaction. She finds it hard to believe that it didn't work, and at that moment she wants with all her heart for him to open his eyes. Suddenly, the wounds on the boy's body disappear. She doesn't understand how this is possible, since she had been told there was no cure for the monsters, poison. Then she realizes that the black leaves really did work. Erin notices that a pattern has appeared where the wound was. She realizes that it doesn't hurt when she touches it, and no more strange visions are appearing. The girl thinks how good it is that Ames didn't experience any side effects, but at the same time, she can't figure out where this mark came from. At that moment, the Emperor asks who left the flowers. A servant replies that Prince Calix came by this morning. His Highness asks if Raymond has been here. From his reaction, he immediately realizes that he is not. He says that his son does not even remember the day his own father fell into an eternal sleep, and asks the priest to tell him honestly everything about his grandson. The Emperor asks whether Raymond has retained the special qualities that an heir must possess. The man replies that nothing has changed, and then asks about Miss Erin. His Majesty explains that his grandson has banished her. He adds that he has tried every possible way to apologize to her, but Raymond won't even listen to him. The Emperor says that Raymond believes he is being tormented. He admits that it would be better to tell the truth, but he cannot do so until the qualities of an heir manifest themselves in him. Suddenly, His Majesty notices the set table and asks the priest what it all means. At that moment, Serena greets the Emperor, and the priest admits he had nothing to do with it. The lady says she heard that he had skipped a meal to visit the temple, so she prepared a feast. She admits that her skills are far from perfect, but asks him to try the dishes, which were prepared with love. The Emperor turns to the priest and reminds him that this is a sacred place. Then he asks how such a wicked girl could have been allowed in here in the first place. Hearing this, the lady realizes they are talking about her. She cannot understand. Could her relationship with Raymond really make her unworthy? Serena turns to the Emperor and says that he has always treated her coldly. She asks him directly what the reason for this attitude is. The lady wonders if it has to do with her background. She says that for 7 years, she has tried her hardest to serve Prince Raymond. Serena assures him that, if he agrees, she will perform her duties just as well as Miss Erin, perhaps even better, and will be able to handle the affairs of the palace. Hearing this, the Emperor is surprised and asks what nonsense she is talking about. His Majesty declares that neither her background nor her abilities matter here. He reminds her that she grew up in wealth, but chose to become Raymond's mistress, and the whole world knows it. He doesn't understand how such a woman could become empress. Serena replies that it follows, then, that she cannot become his wife simply because she has been by his side all these years. The Emperor orders a servant to take her away and never let her back in. Hearing this, the lady turns to him in despair and says she wasn't even given a chance. She confesses that she has loved Prince Raymond since childhood and doesn't understand why he didn't choose her. The Emperor coldly replies that she was never eligible for this position from the start and advises her to give up on this endeavor. As Serena is led away, His Majesty thinks she is too pushy and cannot understand how his grandson could have been with her at all. The Emperor believes that he has raised him as heir to the throne since childhood, but the boy constantly disappoints him. This applies to his claim to the throne, his duties, and even his choice of bride. The priest asks what Prince Raymond will do without Miss Erin. The emperor replies that the Duchess must be brought back. His Majesty says that Raymond claimed he would never return to the palace, but he understands that Raymond still needs Erin. Meanwhile, Ames is thinking that he needs to escape as soon as possible. He realizes that if that creature catches him, he might fall into an eternal sleep. The boy realizes he needs help, but doesn't know who to turn to. He thinks that in the end, he'll only cause everyone unnecessary trouble. Ames opens his eyes and sees Erin. The Marquis says with relief, "Thank goodness he's come to." The young man asks in surprise where he is. The heroine explains that after he lost consciousness, she and Melly carried him to her room. She adds that no one found out about the wound, so there's nothing to worry about, and she's already washed his shirt. Hearing this, Ames says he's caused her a lot of trouble. He admits that he's once again in her debt. Erin replies that it's all right. She adds that he seemed to be having a nightmare, which is why she tried to wake him up. The main character asks how he's feeling and inquires about his wound. The guy says he doesn't feel anything. When he opens his shirt, he sees that the wound has disappeared, and only a mark remains in its place. Erin says the explanation will take a while. She explains that she gave him the black leaves, after which the wound disappeared, and this mark appeared in its place. The girl asks why his wound suddenly got so much worse. Ames replies that he doesn't know, since it was already healing. He says that everything is fine now, but he's never heard of such a mark before. The main character asks if he can stay with her for a while. She's worried he might have another episode, and thinks it would be better if he stayed with her until they're sure everything is really okay. The Marquise adds that she has a spare room. It's small, but, she says, it won't cause any inconvenience. Erin admits that she can't shake her anxiety about the leaves she gave him. She begins to think that everything that happened might be connected to them. Ames takes the girl by the hand and quietly asks why she thinks that. He says that without her help, the poison would have long since sent him into an eternal sleep, and adds that, on the contrary, he is sincerely grateful to her for everything. The young man gently says that if his presence makes her feel more at ease, he'll be happy to stay by her side. And he asks her not to blame herself so much. The young man explains that the mark on his body doesn't hurt at all. In fact, he even feels something strangely pleasant. Erin explains that the pharmacist from whom she bought the medicine had brought it from the north. She suspects that what happened might be connected to the Black Forest. Perhaps those very leaves are an ingredient in the medicine, so she decides to find the pharmacist to get to the bottom of it. Ames says he's sure she'll feel much calmer once she learns the truth about the black leaves. Hearing this, the main character thinks that Ames must be scared too. But despite this, he is worried about her first and foremost. The guy says he's going home for a short while. The girl immediately asks why he needs to do that. Ames explains that he will instruct his servants to renovate the house with the greenhouse. He adds that his trip will not arouse any suspicion. The Marquise nods and thanks him for thinking of such things. The young gentleman says that compared to what she has done for him, this is nothing at all. He adds that he will be back soon. The girl wishes him a safe journey and, at that moment, hopes that nothing will go wrong. Erin reflects on the fact that she was unable to tell him about one very strange detail. When the poison touched her hand, it simply vanished without a trace. She knows for certain that she hadn't eaten any black leaves or taken any other substances, and she doesn't understand why the poison didn't affect her. The main character realizes that, unlike Ames, she has no mark on her body. She understands that her guesses aren't backed up by anything, but she still wonders if perhaps the reason for her healing lies within herself. The next day, the girl recalls how worried she had been about Ames, but now she realizes that he's fine and is truly feeling better, and that means she can get back to work without any worries. When she walks into the cafe, she immediately notices that no one is inside. She wonders where everyone has gone, but soon finds a note from Ames. It says that he has gone to Boyard Street and will be back soon. At that moment, the main character realizes that he's most likely gone to look for a pharmacist. And Melly is probably already busy making drinks, so it's time for her to get started on the desserts. Erin decides to start with scones and a strawberry cake with whipped cream. Then she remembers that she has some chestnut paste left over from last time. She decides to make a Mont Blanc with it. While the almond pastry base is baking in the oven, she mixes whipped cream with the chestnut paste to make a delicate filling. The girl realizes that working with ready-made ingredients is much easier. If she had made the paste herself, it would have taken too much time. She carefully fills the molds with the cream, and the result is a perfect Mont Blanc.